Okay, so I've got both of the compressors here. I've got the torch fired up, and I'm getting ready to remove the high pressure line from the left compressor. So let's go ahead and do that so you can watch and see how this is done. It's not very difficult at all. There's two methods I could use. I could either have the torch in this position, or I could have the torch in this position. Both work equally well. I frankly prefer working in this direction as opposed to this direction. I feel like I have better control. Also use some pliers to grab onto the high pressure line. And the idea is to heat where you think the solder is located. Now in this case, most of the solder is located up at the top. There is some a little deeper, so I want to gradually go up and down. And I'm going to rotate it. And it's just about ready to come on out of there. And there we go. Let's go ahead and take care of the other one while we're at it. In an earlier video pertaining to the copper pipe, I discussed this torch. I highly recommend using it. I can tell that my acetylene, however, is getting low. When that happens, my torch doesn't get as hot as it should. So what I'm burning right now is a lot of oxygen and a very small amount of acetylene. So it's simply not getting hot as it should. So I'm going to stop, change my acetylene tank, and restart. Okay, so the tank has been swapped. I'll go ahead and start to reheat here. And you can see it begin to move. And I want to make sure that I get that larger piece of pipe that's coming out of the compressor hotter for longer. This top piece of pipe, the 1/4 inch, there we go, and there it is. This top piece of pipe, the 1/4 inch, this is a 3/8 inch piece here that's coming out of the compressor. I want to make sure that I focus most of my heat there on that. I've actually done this enough where I know that if this piece of copper here is heated up more than this piece of copper here, this has a thicker wall than this does. This is probably going to break before I ever get it out of there. Now, you got another problem to deal with. So make sure you heat up mostly the 3/8. You don't have to heat it down deep because the solder isn't down very far. It's up towards the end. But make sure you get that hottest first, and then slowly move the torch up towards this piece, and it will come out just like it did there. No problem. Okay, with the high pressure pipes out, I can now do a trial fit. Just make sure that everything lines up where it should without any further modifications. So this is still loose. It still has to be soldered in place, but I can move it around, put it where I need it, which is about right there. So when this gets soldered, there'll be a piece of copper pipe, the suction line, hooked to here. And as long as these two are not in direct line with that, then I'll be in good shape. I'll be able to hook up the high pressure switch, hook up a gauge without any trouble. This access port back here is where the copper line that goes to the condenser will connect to. That's not a line or a port that we're going to need access to once we make that connection. So as long as I have access to it now to do the solder to make that connection, then I shouldn't really need to get back to that line again. So maybe I can cheat just a hair, move it towards this direction a little more. And because these lines are malleable, I can actually move this direction. And this would actually be a very good fit because now I have a direct line that's not occluded by either this suction line here or this section of it here. And these two ports are below these two ports. So I can actually get to both of these even when a line is going to be coming in, the suction line is going to be coming in here. These will simply be between those two lines. So I'm sort of keeping what's going to be there in the future in mind so that I have something that will work. So a high pressure line, an access port for a gauge connection, and then to be able to get to this so that I can make the brazed connection. Looks like that's going to work, so that's what I'm going to go with. On the other side, I've got a similar situation. Here on the right compressor, I've got a situation that looks much like a mirror image to the left side. This pipe is loose. The connection port is near the wall, but the access ports that I need to get to, once all the connections have been made, are free and clear from anything that's there now or that will be there in the future. So I'll have a suction line that'll come in and connect to this port here. And these two ports on the low pressure line sit below the high pressure ports. So as long as I have freedom from the suction line as it goes to here, by these two ports, I'm good. And of course, as long as I can make the connection here when I'm doing my brazing. That looks like a good position for doing all those things. So I think that's what I'm going to keep. So what I'll do now is make sure the solders are done here at this 3/8 and 1/4 inch joint and put this thing back together. I will put 1 or 2 warnings out there once you get to this point. Once this pipe has been pulled, heated up and removed from the compressor, this is a place where debris can get inside of the compressor pretty easily. That would be a terrible thing that could haunt you for a long, long time if you ever have to troubleshoot problems with these compressors and the lines. So keep these caps, keep these pipes covered with caps. I haven't done it here, but I'll prepare to do that now once I shut down this video. These will be covered up with either tape or a cap so that debris won't get inside. The other thing that we're trying to eliminate from the system, no matter where it is atmospheric water. The more water that gets inside of here, the more vacuum time we're going to have to worry about when we're preparing to charge the system. So the sooner I can get this closed off from having debris get inside of it or from water embedding itself inside of the oil that's within this thing, the better off I am. The type of oil that's used in these compressor pumps is what's called hygroscopic. It sucks up the water and doesn't like to release it. So it takes a long time to get water out of this oil once it gets in. So do yourself a favor if you're planning on charging these things and you've got them open. Cover them up as soon as you can, which is what I'm going to do now. What I want to do now is take these mechanical fittings off. Since I've got these high pressure lines removed from the compressors, now would be a good time to go ahead and remove them rather than having to do that in a more confined spot once they're installed on the compressors. So I'll get started doing that now. I think I'll try turning my torch so that it's away from the pliers to begin with. That's oftentimes not as effective. You can see that the heating is a little more distal. It's a little higher up on the line that I'd want it to be. So I'm going to flip this over the other direction towards the pliers, and I think I'll have much better luck heating the joints. Yeah, there we go. So it's that easy. So you want to use a pair of pliers that you don't mind getting oxidized. That will happen. And I'm slowly moving it up and down, heating up the larger pipe first, and then working my way back up. So there's the fitting removed. Now we can work on getting these things back onto the compressors. Okay, I've got the compressor here. A high pressure pipe is here from the other compressor, and now I'm ready to braze it. I had this line capped off to keep debris from going in. I'll remove that. And what I want to do first is to make sure that this is good and clean. So I'll get a pipe cleaner and get that good and clean. Get a bit of a shine to it. Like that. The next thing I have to worry about is its position. So I know I want it like this, and preferably I would like the pipe, the 1/4 inch pipe, to be as straight up and down inside of the 3/8 pipe as possible. So I don't want it tilted like that. I may not actually get silver solder to flow into this tight joint if it tips like that. I'm sure I'll get plenty in the big gap over here. So it's nice to have even joints or even gaps throughout the joint. So what I've been using to accomplish that, to hold this thing for me, since I don't have another set of hands while I'm doing it, is I've been using this clamp. It actually works quite well. And what makes it work so well is this hole in the handle right there. It seems to be in just the right spot and just big enough around to hold the piece of pipe. So the pipe will fit in that hole just right, and with this clamp to the compressor body, it holds it where I need it to be. So I'll show you what I mean here. So I know now I've got the position that I'd like to have once I solder it. Now I've got that clamped down. I could actually rotate it just a little bit more this way so that my two ports aren't interfered by the suction line. As you can see, I've got pretty equal gapping all the way around this joint, which is pretty nice. So it was really by luck that I found this, but it works great, and I'm going to stick with it till I find something better. Now, before soldering these joints, it's always a good idea when you're using the 56% solder to flux the cleaned end. So I'll take some solder flux, and rather than hold this upside down like so, I'll hold it this way so the solder won't be running into the pipe. And I'll brush in downward strokes, not upward. I'm trying to avoid getting this flux inside of the pipe. So that's a good amount of flux on the pipe. We'll set this up again. All right. Yeah, let's rotate it this way just a little more. That's what I like about this tool. If you don't like what you've got, it's easy to change. Now the idea is to heat this 3/8 pipe not far down, because you don't want the silver solder running the length of this thing. It could actually get to the end of the 1/4-inch pipe and create an occlusion, partially blocking or totally blocking the line so you don't get refrigerant running through it. I have seen that happen. So we'll fire up the torch. We'll heat the top portion of this 3/8. Then we'll begin to move the torch up on this 1/4-inch pipe, not far up, but enough so where the silver solder will start to melt onto both of those tubes, and it will start to flow into it. Again, we don't want it flowing deep, just enough to complete our joint. Okay, we've got a nice looking neutral flame here. The wind's blowing pretty heavy out today, and that can affect the flame. So we'll get some of the 56% silver solder straightened out so we can use it. And again, we'll start up kind of high. Doesn't take much heat. idea is to make sure that you've got it soldered all the way around. Right, so the joint is complete. I worked a little more than I ordinarily do to create a fillet there, but it's complete. I can take a brush and check my joint here, make sure there aren't any pits or areas where the silver solder never reached. And it looks good. So what you can see is the completed joint.